এই ভিডিওরে আমি ডিসকস করিবা द आर्ट ऑफ आंसर राइटिंग फॉर OPSC OCS मेन्स आउ एटा आपन साथ डिस्कस करिवे सौरभ दास सर जी की OPSC OCS 2015 रे रैंक 1 आनिथिले आउ एई वर्ष UPSC रे से रैंक होल्डर सो आपन नेक्स्ट वॉइस जो सुनिबे सौरभ सर कर सुनिबे आउ एटा आम क्रैश कोर्स रो गोटे क्लास जोटा आपन देखि परिबे
स्क्रीन शेयर है।
Yes, sir.
So let's start with a little bit of basics. Okay. So can you guys tell me what do you think that an examiner looks for in an answer? Examiner को भलो आंसर कौन लागे? आंसर रे कौन से मन खोजंती? कहारो कौन आइडिया अछि? Please tell me.
The keywords.
Keywords. Okay. What else?
Data facts.
Data facts. What else?
Sir,
Exactly
Okay,
माने
what else?
क्वेश्चन के जहाँ मेन पचरा है तो तार how that
Very
is
good.
addressed in the question or not.
That is called demand of the question. What else?
representation.
Should be
Presentation.
within the word limits.
Word limit. Okay. What else? Thought very good.
जदि किसी डायग्राम रे हमें ताको simply कम word और space रे represent कर पारिबा. So that would be plus point I think.
Again, this will also come under presentation, but okay, very good. Diagrams. What else? We'll discuss about all of these things. Don't worry. For the timing, let me curve this thing at this point only. Initially, what I want you to understand that suppose तुम got a copy check करूଛ, I can guarantee you that ए सबु जिंस तो माइंड रे आसीबो नाही. Only because right now I'm asking you, so it's coming now. The first thing that any examiner will look for in any answer will be, do you know what it is? Simplicity. It should be simple. If it is complex, you think about it yourself. तुमको गोटे आंसर दिया जीवो सेटा माने पारा वाइज बहुत लेंदी अछि, वर्ड लिमिट क्रॉस करी छि एंड सेतरे तुम खोजिया पडुछि आंसर एटे एग्जैक्टली कोठी अछि, you will get irritated. The first and foremost thing is simplicity, and from this we will also derive the third point, which is that ease of evaluation. Now everything else, in my opinion, and again these are subjective things, all of these things we will also discuss, but these are the primary things that an examiner looks. Okay, ये सब जिनस आसियो, ये सब जिनस या अंडर रे रहिबो, कंटेंट प्रेजेंटेशन ये सब जिनस रहिबो, but the first and foremost thing is these things, and the most important is ease of evaluation. केते easily से copy को check करि पारियो. Now this is an important insight you have to understand, that almost entire effort of answer writing is to make the work of the examiner easy, to make your answer simple, to meet the demand of the question, and make the copy checking process simple and easy, so that the examiner will become happy. Examiner को खुशी करायार अछि. Okay, this is the crux of the your answer. Now खुशी केमिदिया कराइबा, से सब जिंस आसीबो या अंडर सेतरे फैक्ट थिबो, प्रेजेंटेशन भलो थिबो, वर्ड लिमिट भीतर रहिथिबो, है ना, डेटा और फिगर थिबो, क्लैरिटी ऑफ थॉट थिबो, डायग्राम थिबो, डायमेंशन थिबो. ई सब जिंस आमे काई करछे, बिकॉज़ आंसर को देखले एग्जामिनर खुशी हो, राइट? So whenever if you are having any doubt in your answer, suppose तुम evaluate भी करे देलो काटू तापर भी तुम माइंड रे डाउट होउची whether I have written a good answer or not, you put yourself in the shoes of the examiner and you think कि जदि मु ये आंसर टा को इवैल्यूएट करी थांती, मते ये आंसर टा इजी हेई थांता कि नहीं इवैल्यूएट करियो, मो काम इजी हेई पार थांता कि नहीं. जदि हेई पार न थांता, then it's not a good question. You can be an intellectual, okay, intellectual terrorism कर दो ता ऊपर माने एते bombastic word पके दो, examiner will feel irritated. Point is, even if you had knowledge, still you made the work of the examiner difficult. Okay, so this is the crux of an answer. बुझी होची केतळे किछि यदि डाउट हो, immediately you just ask me, stop me, and you have to ask me. बुझी होची कोन कहूची?
Yes, sir.
Someone please give some feedback. मझे मझे मु पचारि just to take your feedback so that you are following. यदि किछि डाउट हो केतळे भी you can ask me. Now then we will go to next part of the answer writing process, is that how to actually write an answer. Okay. So to understand how to write a good answer, we have to understand that there are two major aspects of a good answer or even a bad answer. What are the two major aspects? One is content, the other is presentation. These are the keywords that we are going to use so that even while your copy is being evaluated, suppose तुम copy evaluation होबो, suppose test series रे हमें देखी तुम copy दबु से सतळे ये सब term गुडा जतळे लिखियो, you should be able to understand कि what do we mean by this. Okay. So for that also it is important for you to understand what these terms mean. Now content माने कौन? Basically broadly whatever knowledge that you have, what you have actually written. So this will also meet the demand of the question. This will include all these things that many of the things that you talked about, data, figure, report, indices, whether you have written some case study, some examples, all these things will come under knowledge. These are all content. Okay. And everything else we can put under presentation. What exactly is presentation? Presentation under as your handwriting. As your spacing, as your alignment, as your diagrams. Diagram is such a thing which is usually an overlap of both these things. Diagram can also deliver content. It is also a way of presenting. Okay. So diagrams or figures, they can also come under presentation. Mostly they come under presentation. So now let's try to understand what these things mean. Okay. बहुत ही बेसिक जिनसे मुझे जानची बहुत सारा पिलाने जो मैंने तो मैंने आगु आंसर लिखचो तो मन को बहुत बेसिक थी स्टिल आई एम अज्यूमिंग कि जो मैंने बिगिनर्स थी तांको पई कहूची. So content आमे सबले कोन कहू, content is king. Content is king, presentation is queen. Although it might sound a bit sexist, the point is that content is more important. If you don't have content, then you don't have a good answer. Okay. But whenever content not through presentation also we can write a passable kind of answer which will give us some marks. Instead of no marks, we'll get some marks. And even when we have content, if you can present your answer better, you will get better marks for the same content than if you did not know how to write the answer. माने होची कंटेंट न थिले केवल प्रेजेंटेशन द्वारा अल्प किछि मार्क मिली परियो, लेट्स से 10 मार्क रु गोटे 2 मार्क भी पाई जे परियो जे तुमरो भला आइडिया डेवलप हेइतो हाउ टू राइट समथिंग. आउ मेनली एटा इंपोर्टेंस यार सतबेले कि जतबेले हम पाखरे कंटेंट भला भी थिबो, नॉलेज थिबो, सब फैक्ट फिगर सब किछि थिबो, स्टिल इफ वी कैन राइट वेल, हमें प्रेजेंट वेल माने प्रेजेंट भलो भाबरे करि परिया, ताले से सेम कंटेंट थाई कि भी हमको एक्स्ट्रा मार्क मिलियो. माने यूजुअली जदी लेट्स से you should be getting 4 out of 10 in a question, with good presentation will get 6 out of 10 or even 7 out of 10. So presentation is a sort of value addition on the basis of content, but again the basis will always be content. So content is king, presentation is queen. Now content भितर कौन जिनस सब आसे discussed, या भितर तमर बेसिक नॉलेज थिबा दरकार. तो ये नॉलेज रु ही हमरो डिमांड ऑफ द क्वेश्चन मीट हो. Let's discuss a little bit about this thing. What do you mean by demand of the question? For the timing, now consider one example. Let's say got a question aschi, how can India become?
Sir,
Yes. Let's take two examples and very briefly discuss what does this mean. Let's say there is another question. What happened? I don't know. Let's say there are two different questions. One question is, how does climate change impact biodiversity? Okay. And another question is, how can India become a 5 trillion economy by 2047, 2030, whichever year they are giving? So let's say one person into this question writes an answer that India has, this is his answer or her answer, that Indian Prime Minister has declared our goal of becoming a 5 trillion economy. Okay. So 5 trillion economy will ensure that India is developed in every sphere, and he has explained how India will be developed. Okay. let's say politically ଆମର ଏମିତିଆ ହବ, economically ଏଇଆ ହବ, ଆମର trade deficit reduce ହେଇଯିବ, surplus ଆମର ହେଇଯିବ, so ଲୋକଙ୍କର disposable income ବଢିଯିବ, ଏ ସବୁ ଜିନିଷ ହେଇଯିବ. Okay, and therefore our goal of becoming a 5 trillion economy must be adhered to, something like this. Is this, how much do you think this answer will get, let's say out of 10?
Maybe
Any
one.
guess? One.
For the introduction.
Okay, for the introduction only one. Someone is saying 4 out of 10. You think this answer will get 4 out of 10?
So the answer mentions only the after effects of India becoming a 5 trillion economy.
Very
So
good. तो कितने मार्क मिले तुमको लागुଛି?
maybe 1 for effort.
I also think max 1 or 2. है ना? The point is, see, the question was not कि what will happen after India becomes a 5 trillion economy. What the question is asking, how can we become a 5 trillion economy? So you have to show that, okay, these are the pathways of becoming a 5 trillion economy. With the same kind of content, you can tailor it a bit and you can write that, okay, these are the ways in which we can become 5 trillion economy. For example, we can increase our trade. We can develop technology. Technology upgradation ହେଇଗଲେ ସେଥିରେ ବି ଆମ productivity increase ହେଇଯିବ, है ना? We can develop our industries. Industries is our least developed sector. We can also increase, let's say, services sector को हमें माने tertiary sector ରୁ ଆମେ ଯିବା quaternary or quinary sector को भी जाई परिया, है ना? For example, becoming knowledge economy. Now it's a new frontier that is opening up. Developing, exporting. You think of new things, exporting innovation. Okay, these are the things, different ways in which India can become a 5 trillion economy. Now, this is how you address the demand of the question, because the demand was that how can we? Okay, how can we become this 5 trillion economy? So first and foremost, we have to understand what the examiner wants to know. Believe me, if the examiner feels that you have written what you know instead of what he or she has asked or what UPSC or OPSC has asked, person will feel irritated. Now, maybe if you have written a lot and you have put some facts and figures out of kindness or mercy, they will give you 1 or 2 marks. Otherwise, you will not get a lot of marks. So first and foremost, you have to understand what they are asking. And this is one thing you have to understand here also, is that let's say sometimes you don't know whether you are meeting the demand of the question or not. What you can do is there is a very simple exercise. You try it once or twice. You take any previous year question and then you write an answer. Okay, let's say this is your answer. Now you hide the question, you show this your answer to your friend and you tell him or her कि ए क्वेश्चन ए मोर आंसर टा पढ़ी कि मते कहो कि आंसर रो क्वेश्चन कोन आइतियो. And if that question is matching to the original question, you know that you are writing as per the demand of the question. If consistently you find that your friend says one kind of question and the actual question is something else, then you know that you are missing the demand of the question. Okay. So, for example, here, if this person had written this answer, and say आउ कहा जाई पचारियो कि मते कहो कि एटा कहार आंसर थिला, and obviously the question will be something different. The question will be, say सांगो गेस करियो कि अच्छा क्वेश्चन थिला कि 5 trillion economy ହେଇगले इंडिया रा कोन हबो, है ना? Then you will understand, okay, I am not writing as per the demand. And this is very, very important, because try to understand what major mistake people do is that we do what is known as keyword matching. आमे keyword देखो ताको match करो. And in fact, many coaching institutes also teach you this thing, है ना? किछि जगह रे तो एटा को एमती गोटे बेदर गार टाइप रे हेछि कि पिला माने किछि क्वेश्चन ठीक से पढंती भी नाही. देखि छि टेस्ट सीरीज रे. So what they will see, they will see this question, they will just start underlining 5 trillion economy, India 2030. Okay, they'll start writing 5 trillion economy was given by so and so, and 2030 was this targets. But try to understand, the question is not about 5 trillion or about 2030. Question is, there is a saying which says that the sum is more than, the whole is more than sum of its parts. So components, individual component haru, sum might be something more. Okay. So that means that you are not just a collection of, let's say, blood and bone, you are much more than that. So don't just always mindlessly break down the question into कीवर्ड मैचिंग देखो कीवर्ड मैचिंग रो भी एडवांटेजेस अछि मु कहबी को जगह रे कीवर्ड मैचिंग करिया को पड़ियो फॉर एग्जांपल व्हेन यू डोंट नो मच अबाउट दैट क्वेश्चन इन दैट केस यू हैव टू डू कीवर्ड मैचिंग बिकॉज़ तुम पाखरे किछ ऑप्शन ही नहीं but otherwise first try to understand ki what is the demand of the question again see in this kind of question the question was that how does climate change impact biodiversity you know many people when they start writing an answer to this question they will start with introduction se mane emtia start kariye ki climate change what is climate change they will define climate change they will define biodiversity okay then they will write a few points on climate change and a few points on biodiversity कि क्लाइमेट चेंज एमती एमती होची फैक्ट एंड फिगर भी किछि लिखि देबे कि एज पर दिस आईपीसीसी रिपोर्ट climate change is we are not on the path to restrict ourselves to 1.5 or even 2 degree Celsius below industrial level and biodiversity ऊपर आउ किछि गोटे पॉइंट लिख दे according to IPBES एमती एमती हेतिला but that is not the demand of the question is asking कि how will climate change impact biodiversity so here you have to write let's say कि climate change हेले कोन हो biodiversity in general lose करियो हम कोड कोड लूज करिया जोटा ट्रॉपिकल एरिया थिवो सेतरे बहुत सारा स्पेसिफिक जो सॉरी स्पेसिस जो मान थिवे जो माने स्पेशलिस्ट्स will lose out on them whereas there will be many kind of species which are generalists they will relatively survive more because these kind of species need a specific kind of environment and with climate change they will lose their environment so these species will we will see a reduction in these kind of species we'll see species like amphibians reducing a lot whereby many mammals will see that they are also thriving. You know? Many species which are euryhaline and many species will be stenohaline. Now these species will perish. These species will relatively survive. So here you are you are addressing the demand of the question ki how does climate change impact biodiversity? Biodiversity को केमिति impact करियो? You are not writing biodiversity in isolation or climate change in isolation. Are you able to understand the point I'm trying to make?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. कोड भी किसी डाउट हले मते पचारियो so this is the first and foremost point to understand the demand of the question so don't mindlessly just underline keywords and then start writing about what you know always try to understand what the examiner wants to know from you and then write the answer believe me when you are an examiner and you have checked let's say 1,000 copies and you see that again and again people are making same kind of mistakes you will not feel good and you will give them very below average marks and usually these are the people who will complain after the exam कि मु तो एग्जाम रे सब किछि लिखितली फिर भी मते मार्क आसलान है ना नेक्स्ट इज अदर काइंड ऑफ कंटेंट आउ कोन कंटेंट रही पारे कंटेंट अंडर रे सेमति आसीबो लेट्स से करंट अफेयर्स है ना this also comes under a broad term known as value addition करंट अफेयर्स आसीबो एतरे केस स्टडीज आसीबो एथरे आसीबो एग्जांपल्स है ना आउ कोन आसीबो एथरे आसीबो लॉज आर्टिकल्स ओके गवर्नमेंट स्कीम्स other initiatives
Sir, reports.
very good reports and
Verdict.
indices yes laws schemes initiatives या अंडर आमे एथि लिख परिया कि केस स्टडी रो verdicts या cases थिला
Verdicts.
very good reports and indices facts and figures so these come under these are also part of what is known as content okay now ए सब का हमें value addition काहे कहूचे because it is adding value to some very basic things and which are the basic things may be definition these may be some kind of basic theory है ना which everyone is expected to know these are the basic things and beyond this whatever content we are adding these are the things current affairs case studies examples reports indices all these things they are adding value to your argument or your point so for example let's say ki you are saying there is let's say you are saying that India needs to invest in its public expenditure on education. Now, no one is denying that this is a fact. that we need to invest in our public expenditure on education. So this is very, very basic thing. Okay, this is the basic part. But now you have to add something. You have to say that our public expenditure on education till now has not reached, let's say, 4% of GDP. So it is below 4% of GDP or even 2% of GDP. So this is something that we are lacking. So now this is the fact or figure which is justifying or adding value to your claim or your assertion. Right? So this is why we call it value addition. All of these come under the content. Okay. Now there is something also known as current affairs. Current affairs, we also include this under another bigger subheading which is known as context. Okay. Context is also a part of content. Now content under a gote topic hela context under a asibo current affairs. So यार माने कौन current affairs and why is it called value addition? Can someone give me an example?
Sir, I can give one example. Sir, ଯେମିତି କି ଆପଣ ଏବେ climate change କଥା କହିଲେ sir, ଗୋଟେ recently news ରେ ଥିଲା ଯେ due to climate change, Venezuela lost its all glacier. ତ sir ଆମେ ସେଇ dimension କୁ ଦେଇପାରିବା ଯେ climate change ପାଇଁ କେମିତି sea level rise ହଉଛି. ତ
Very
ତାର
good,
context
excellent. Very good. So basically बेले बेले देखियो तमे बहुत सारा क्वेश्चन जोटा आसीथियो से क्वेश्चन टा माने एमती हाफाजार्डली आसीनथियो से क्वेश्चन गोटे कंटेक्स्ट थ्रू रे आस्थियो. Okay. Let's say for example let's say recently Dr. Manmohan Singh died, है ना? So death of Manmohan Singh, this was the previous prime minister. This came in the news. So if recently your examination is being held, they might ask you a question: कि what was the contribution of Dr. Manmohan Singh to Indian economy? Or they can even ask you कि write about the LPG reforms of 1991. Now you can begin this answer by writing that the recent death of previous prime minister brought into the context of the reforms he had introduced in 1991 when he opened Indian economy to global players. Now, this is how you are showing to the examiner that, okay, I understand why you asked this question. कि आमको कहीं ये क्वेश्चन पचराई मु बुझुछि तो ता द्वारा गोटे बहुत ही भलो इंपैक्ट पड़े. Okay. Let's say सेमती recently किछ गोटे cyclone हला and there is a question on cyclone. So you understand, okay, maybe because of this they have asked you a question. Or it can even be very, very even more specific. Okay. Let's say what's a more specific example through which they can ask you a question. Let's say there is an incident in which there is some, there are some deep fake cases. Okay, some actor or actress, they have been implicated or they have been embarrassed. So you can start that recent spate of deep fake cases have put into focus the drawbacks of this emerging technology, and from this you can start. So you are telling the examiner that, okay, I understand why you have asked this question. So that is why this is also known as, this is a type of value addition. Then can anyone explain what is a case study? You can also give an example.
Case study is a real life example, like when it comes to disaster management, Odisha model is often like given as a model.
Very good. Very good. So case study is a very specific example which illustrates a point very, very well, or shows that a problem can be achieved or solved through certain kind of way. So this is a very specific example that you can put to justify or substantiate your point. Justify the को substantiate କରିବା ପାଇଁ. Okay, you can use it. So for example, if a question is on disaster management, you can always write that United Nations has praised the Odisha model of disaster management. So what else? What other case study can we, one, two other case studies? Can someone give example?
Sir, water conservation in Rajasthan.
Very good. So there is a Bongaigaon model of tackling malnutrition. So you can give that as a case study. Johad model of Rajasthan. This is an example of how we can rejuvenate our water bodies. So these are examples of case studies. So case studies also enrich our answer.
Sir, Odisha SSG group କଥା ବି लिख पारबा sir, women empowerment ପାଇଁ.
Very good. Odisha ro women SSG group लिख पारिया. Here you can. What is that program known as? Mission Shakti.
Mission Shakti.
Very good. So this is a good So this is a good example of case studies. So this is also a way of enriching your answer. So या द्वारा तुम्हें एग्जामिनर को कहो कि देखो ऐसी बात नहीं है कि हवा में बातें चल रही है. We know what we are talking about and this is the example. Okay. So now that we have, so see, example got a broader term and तारा got a specific part है case studies. So example is a much broader term and what can we call as an example? This is usually a very, maybe it can be a very generic thing, maybe also a specific thing, but it is not a model. Okay, it is an instance, but not a model. So let's say example mane kaun ho? Let's say for example, you are saying ki you are asked ki to define empathy or sympathy. So you say ki one of the personification of empathy or sympathy is Mother Teresa. So now Mother Teresa is an example, but Mother Teresa is not a case study. It's an example. So this is the only difference. Example is a bit more generic and it's a single instance maybe, but case studies are much better. If you have a case study that enriches your answer better. Okay. Otherwise, example तो तुमको जाना चाहिए. Example माने कौन? Very basic things. Now reports, indices, facts and figures. Facts and figures, you understand? Fact द्वारा हमें justify करियो. Okay. Let's say you are writing that Odisha or even you are writing that India. Let's say India has reduced poverty. Now, what is the basis of your claim that India has reduced poverty? You have to provide some fact to justify your claim. So you will say that India has reduced poverty because as per Niti Aayog's recent report of multidimensional poverty index or multidimensional poverty report, now India has lifted, let's say, 21 million people out of poverty or some other statistics, or our percentage of multidimensional poverty has reduced from 33% to let's say 21%. I don't remember the exact figures. I'm just giving you an example. The point is whatever claim or assertion you are making, you justify it with some fact and figure. So this enriches your answer. And do remember one thing, whenever you are mentioning any fact or figure, unless that fact is very, very well known, unless it is very, very well known, very generic kind of fact, then you have to always mention the source. Who said this? Okay. Let's say you are saying that India's forest cover has increased from let's say 21% to now 24% or something. Now, who has said this? How do you know that it has increased? So you have to mention that as per the forest report of, what is that report called? Biannual report or something?
ISFR.
India, sir,
ISFR.
India forest.
State of forest report or whatever. So according to this report, recent report 2023 or 2024, now you are giving this fact. So that is the point, that whenever you are quoting facts, you will mention the source. Okay. This adds value to your answer. Now there are some very generic figures which are very, very well known. There you don't have to give facts. For example, you are writing that, okay, India's GDP is now, let's say 3.5 trillion. I don't need to mention that this is as per economic survey or as per PIB, because now this is a well-known fact. Okay.
No, sir.
Sir, do we need to be pinpoint accurate with the facts and figures, like the numbers?
What do you mean exactly pinpoint माने कौन? देखो मैंने जो डेसिमल कथा पूछा, डेसिमल तो भूल ही जाओ. 1 डेसिमल लिख लिए फॉलो कथा.
नहीं डेसिमल काइंड ऑफ नहीं, बट नहीं जेनरिक प्लस माइनस 2 3 रो सेमती चलियो, बट जंदी 27% जदी देछि त हम एग्जैक्टली 27% ही उठे लिखार अछि कि 26 की 28 लिखले जे भूल ही जो.
अच्छा एथरो मते ଗୋଟେ ବଢିଆ ଜିନିଷ ମନେ ପଡିଲା. ଦେଖ ତମ ପାଖରେ ତୁମ ଯଦି ଆଇडिଆ ଅଛି ତ ଏକ୍ସାକ୍ଟଲି ଫିଗର କେତେ ଲେଖି ପାରିବ. See, this is another trick. Now you and this is something you have to do while you are making your note making time रे ଜିନିଷ କରିବ. Whenever you are making note, you will always be tempted to always write down the facts and figures as it is, है ना, पूरा exact facts and figures. Let's say newspaper तुम ଗୋଟେ article पढ़छ, एथरे तुम देखलो कि something it has improved to 26%, है ना, or 29%, or let's say 32%. Now, how do we remember these facts and figures? While making note, you always ask yourself, ମୁଁ ଏମିତି way ରେ କିଛି ଗୋଟେ ଜିନିଷ note କରିବି ଯୋଉଟାକୁ ମତେ easy to remember ହବ at the time of exam. So how can we make these figures easy to remember? First of all, जदि तुम पाखरे ऑप्शन अछि, let's say 2-3टा फिगर तुम पाखरे अछि, गोटा हला 26%, गोटा हला 25%, गोटा हला 27%, ताले ए फिगर टाको ही नोट करो. and ଏଇଟା କୁ ହିଁ ମନେ ରଖ. Why? Because this thing is easier to remember than 26 or 27. Now suppose you don't have this option. Now it is only 26% or 32%. How do we remember this? While making note, you write this, what is 26%? It is very near to 25%. So you write that more than a quarter, or you write that more than 1/4. If it is 32%, you write that almost 1/3. While making note, you make note like this. Suppose something is coming around to be 65%. ଯଦି 65% ମନେ ନ ରହୁଛି ତାହେଲେ ଏମିତିଆ ନୋଟ୍ କର କି almost 2/3. ବୁଝିହଉଛି? These are the tricks. While making note, you have to ask yourself, how can I remember this factor figure better? बहुत सारा tricks and tips हम ପରେ next classes रे भी କହିବି. But point is not that if you are writing a figure 26% ଲେଖୁଛ, unless it is very very well known, it is okay. If you can also write almost nearly 25% or 27%, no one will mind. But if a figure is very very well known, let's say ki they are asking ki what is the target for Indian economy, and instead of 5 trillion economy you are writing 4 trillion economy. Now this is not pardonable, because you are expected to understand 5 trillion or 4 trillion with a huge differences. 1 trillion is huge difference. So here you cannot say कि ये तो 19-20 ही वाला, এটা 19-20 no, this is a huge difference. So first point, to answer your question, if exact figure tomorrow मने रहुची तो भलो कथा. नोट मेकिंग टाइम रे ही ए भला फिगर एमतिया लेखो जोटा कि इजी हबो मन रखिया को. जदि मने न पडुची 19-20 हेई पारियो in most of the facts and figures, unless something is very very well known. In that case, if you don't know exactly what it is, you should leave it. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Next is reports and indices. Reports and indices, again, they enrich your answer by adding value to your answer. Okay. So you'll say, okay, according to this and this report, let's say according to Transparency International, the perception of corruption index, India's rank is so and so. So according to this index or this report, you are saying something. So this adds value to your answer. So again, it shows to the examiner that, okay, you know that there is evidence for your argument. ଏମିତି ତମେ ମନ ଇଚ୍ଛା କଥା କହୁନ. Very very basic things. Now verdicts, laws, articles, schemes, initiatives. Obviously verdicts, specific things that you are writing, these will come into play in polity part. You are writing, let's say you are writing one question on prevention of sexual harassment at workplace. You will mention Visakha case. Similarly, if you are talking about right to life and liberty, you can mention, who can you mention? Right to life and liberty.
Puttaswamy.
Okay, Puttaswamy. Let's say this comes under privacy part.
Menka Gandhi case.
Menka Gandhi case also comes under right to life. So whatever point is, whatever you are writing in polity, you have to usually, you can justify it with a verdict that will strengthen your case and you will get better marks. Similarly, laws, articles, rules and regulations. Again, you can write these things on anything related to polity. You can write this in questions related to society. You can write it in essay. Okay. Let's say there is a very basic question on let's say there is a question on women's health. So you can mention the article which says that it is the duty of the state to ensure that it safeguards the interests of women and children. If there is a question on, let's say writs, so you mention, okay, article 32. So these will always strengthen your case. Very basic things. What else is there? Schemes and initiatives. Again, I'm sure that most of you know these things. But why do we write schemes and initiatives? କାହିଁକି ଲାଗୁଛି ତୁମକୁ schemes initiatives କାହିଁକି ଲେଖିବା ଦରକାର?
Sir, ଏଥିରେ
way
ଆମେ
forward.
Government
Very good.
interventions.
Yes, these are government interventions, but why do we need to mention them?
So that we acknowledge the government's efforts as well, because we are going to part of that system.
Yes, because this is a government exam, it's a government job. So you are going to be part of this system. So if you don't know what this system is about, then how can they expect you to work in it? This is similar to when you go for any interview. Let's say you are even going to a private company. So मैं TCS, Infosys, Wipro कोठी को जाओ interview देवा को. So let's say you are going to TCS, and they will always ask you a question: why do you want to join TCS? What do you see in TCS? Okay. The point is that, and तुमको ता ପାଇଁ आगରୁ prepare ହେବାକୁ ପଡିବ. ତୁମେ ସେଠି କହିବ sir ମୁଁ ତ ଜାଣିନି TCS କ'ଣ କରେ, but ମୁଁ ଦେଖିଲି କି ଏଠି ଭଲ ପଇସା ମିଳୁଛି, package ମିଳୁଛି, ସେଥିପାଇଁ ମୁଁ ଆସିଗଲି. So they will understand that you are not serious about this job, or you are motivated by other things. So because you are going to be an officer, because you are going to be a civil servant, so you are expected to know what government has already done. So you have to do your prior research for that. So for that purpose, this is signaling that thing. Okay, you understand why this question has been asked. And again, the other answer is also, this is also valid, that it is also a way forward. You are saying ki way forward to no, this is actually what has already been done. Already done ଜିନିଷ ରେ ଆମେ କହିପାରିବା କି way forward no. ये सब ଜିନିଷ ହେଇଛି way forward ରେ, then you will see କି ଆଉ କ'ଣ କ'ଣ କରିହବ future ରେ, ଆଉ କ'ଣ କ'ଣ କରିହବ. These are your suggestions. That is different. Okay. So this is all about content. ଆଉ ଯଦି କିଛି ବି ଛାଡି ଦେଇଥି ତମେ ବୁଝିପାରିବ କୋଉଟା content କୋଉଟା presentation. Okay. Any doubt in content so far?
No, sir.
Now let's come to the presentation part. What do we mean by presentation? Presentation, in short, overall, what it means is that how your paper or answer sheet looks and how it reads. Overall, how it looks and how it reads, that is known as presentation. So this is an umbrella term under which we can put a lot of things. So handwriting is just one part of it. So what is the point of, what is the purpose of presentation? The purpose of presentation is to present your answer in such a way that, again, the job of the examiner is made easy, so that he or she can evaluate your answer easily and can find your answer very well. And ତାଙ୍କୁ ଯେମିତି ଖୋଜିବାକୁ ପଡିବନି. ଯେତେବେଳେ ତୁମେ examiner କୁ extra କାମ କରାଇବ, ଯେତେବେଳେ ତାକୁ force କରାଇବ କି ତୁମ answer ରେ exactly କୋଉଠି keywords and everything ଅଛି, then the person will get irritated. Okay. So presentation under କ'ଣ କ'ଣ ଆସିବ? Handwriting ଆସିବ, highlighting or underlining ଆସିବ, spacing ଆସିବ, alignment is there. We'll discuss very briefly what this means. So handwriting is important. It's not as important as many people think, but still it is important because you have to write at least a neat handwriting. Okay. You don't have to write cursive or something, but it has to be neat. Why? Again, because of ease of evaluation. And also because understand, if the person cannot, examiner cannot read your answer, then how will he or she evaluate it? So if you don't have a good handwriting, if you have a good handwriting, then you are sorted. If you don't have your good handwriting, then you have to focus on these parts. And these parts will become especially more important for you. Because handwriting change easy. So then what you can do is you can change your spacing and alignment. We'll discuss about that, how you can do it. The second part is highlight or underline. Whatever you have written, you should always underline the keywords. You should always underline your headings, your subheadings. Okay. You can also do what is known as boxing. This also comes under highlight. I'll show you in very, very brief. Okay. Let's say in a similar kind of question, let's say the question is, what do you mean by conflict of interest? Okay. So this is an ethics question. So let's say you are starting with a sort of definition. This is the conflict of interest. Then you are writing some examples for it. So whenever you are giving an example, you underline that. Okay. So you'll write that, let's say ICICI chairperson, Chanda Kochar, she was found to have conflict of interest in a case where her own bank was involved. For that reason, she was removed. So here you have to underline this. Okay. So this is drawing the attention of the examiner. Look, I have written an important point here. These are very basic things I know. Whenever you are giving some heading or subheading, you should always underline it. Let's say you are dividing your answer into different parts. So let's say you are writing ki, okay, in another kind of question, you are writing that these are the political implications. This is the social implication or social effects. Under each heading, you should always underline and then write 1-2 line under that like this. Okay. So these are very basic things. Sometimes if you don't want to underline, you can also write like ତମେ କ'ଣ normally ଏମିତିଆ ଲେଖୁଥିବ କିଛି ଗୋଟେ ମଝିରେ ତମେ ତାକୁ caps lock or capital ରେ ବି ଲେଖିପାରିବ. Let's say this is another trick that you can always write. Let's say you are writing about right to life. You are writing a right to life was highlighted in a case of in this Menaka Gandhi case. You can write like this also. Case of so and so 1976 or whatever. This is also another way of highlighting. Without underlining also you can highlight. And there is another kind of highlighting that many people usually don't do. But if you can pick up this is a very neat trick. If you can pick it up, your answer will look much better. This is something known as boxing. Very simple thing, but both loka eta karantin. So boxing is something you are highlighting it specifically for a very unique content. Okay, please don't box very basic things. Okay, don't box very generic definitions or these things. You have, if you are boxing something, it has to be very, very unique. Okay. Say recently I was reading a news that China has developed a 6th generation fighter aircraft. Now suppose you are writing something about defense sector. Question will not be on China. Question will be on defense sector or modernization of defense sector. या ऊपर question थियो. Or preparedness of India with respect to its traditional threats. तो या ऊपर तुम गोटे आंसर लिखुछ and इटा suppose current affairs रू ए जिनस रा उठेलो. Now what you have writing, suppose this is how you are writing. इधर answer लिखुछ and here you can box it and you can draw the attention of the examiner. Look, I have written a good example here. China has recently developed a 6th generation fighter jet. So this is imperative. Now it is imperative that India also has to develop its own program. For example, you can write we have an AMCA program, 5th generation or 5.5 generation aircraft. So you can box this also. So your point should be, for boxing, it should be very, very unique. You cannot box something like poverty. What is the definition of poverty by Amartya Sen is this and this. Usually you should not write like this. If you are boxing, it means specifically drawing attention. So that should be something very, very good. Okay. So now let's come to the next part, spacing and alignment. Now what do we mean by spacing and alignment?
सर जार हैंडराइटिंग से बड़ रोची सेटा केमती सेटा ये करिवो सेटा ही कथा से पड़छि कारण एते क्लियर आसीबनी सर रूलिंग पेपर रे जार हैंडराइटिंग टिके ही रहउछि तो सर सेटा केमती करिवो.
Even in the ruled paper,
again
you have to give enough spacing. Let's say this is how the paper is ruled. So let's say you are writing now, your job is even easier. So 80 तमे भिडी भिडी की एमतिया किछि लेखुछ. Let's say you are writing कि as per this report so and so एमतिया किछि गोटे paragraph लेखुछ and ए paragraph रे 80 सरला. Now don't immediately start writing from this point. You give enough space, either start writing from this point or from this point. So depending on what kind of answer sheet you have, you can always give enough space, always give space, because this makes the evaluation easier. It also saves your own time, because तुम answer sheet टा पूरिला भलिया देखा जिवो and तुमको बहुत बेसी वर्ड सेतरे यूज करियो पड़िबनी. जदि बहुत ruled copy रे भी सब लाइन रे लिखिया को ट्राई करियो ताले you will exceed your word limit. We'll show you a few examples of understanding what is neat and what is not neat. See, this is a very neat kind of answer. Now if you, let's say ki this is your answer copy. Okay, this is your OPSC answer copy. You can write like this, but you see where, let's say this is where the passage has ended. The next passage should start from this or even from this. Okay, it should not start from here or here. Okay, so this is the meaning of neat. Second inside alignment ro bhi out hai jetala ame heading or subheading debu. Try to understand this. Suppose this is your side ruling, or even if there is no side ruling, still you should leave some space on either side. Okay? Because that space will be used by the examiner. It mark for comments usually they have given that space. So let's say you have given some heading here. Then don't start writing from this point only. Okay. एठू टिके छाड़ी की ई पॉइंट लिखा स्टार्ट करियो. And suppose a heading under रे आउ किसी subheading आसिला. Then write the subheading here, and under this subheading whatever you are writing, write here. Then again a heading को return करछा तळे again e to start करियो. Then second heading एठी आउ गोटे heading suppose हैला ता under subheading e to start out. अच्छा. So this is a way in which you are telling the examiner that this part comes under this part and this part comes under this part. So this is something you can pick up from a lot of textbooks. See some standard textbooks and how they have written there, how it is printed. So it makes the job of the examiner easy. Examiner ko otherwise what examiner will think that many times people will, if people are writing everything from this end to end, examiner will feel ki okay sabu point guda hoche first heading under ହିଁ ସବୁ point ଆସୁଛି. So the sub classification of subheadings will not happen. So this is also an example of spacing and alignment. ବୁଝି ହଉଛି କ'ଣ କହୁଛି ଏପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ? Okay, so next move on to the next type of part of our discussion, then that is known as dimensions. And this comes under something which is known as structuring of answers. Now, structuring of answers, if you will see, this comes somewhere under, sorry, not under, but in the overlapping zone of content and presentation. Okay, yara maja majra aise what structuring of answers. Now, what do we mean by dimensions? Can anyone explain dimension kon?
And addressing the question in like with different possibilities, like social, political, legal, institutional, anything.
Very good. So these are basically different approaches to a question or issue, or different ways of looking at an issue, or different sectors of a topic, or different factors ए सब जिनस आसीओ dimensions. So dimension basically होची केते different facets अछि गोटे जिनस. Let's say for example there is a question which is asking ki how did COVID-19 change India? Okay. Now this seems like a generic kind of question. COVID-19, how did COVID-19 change India? I will say ki suppose one person has written ki okay, COVID-19, how it has changed is that people's health has taken a turn for the worse. Okay, even though we developed a lot of vaccines, still many people died. Okay, it has made a lot of people vulnerable to other diseases. All of these things. Let's say entire question is answer is on this. Now this entire question is what we call a unidimensional question, because the entire this entire answer is unidimensional. Why? Because the answer is looked at from only one angle, and that is the health angle. But the question was not how did COVID-19 change health sector in India. The question was how did COVID-19 change India. So now you have to see in how many different ways it has changed. Now it has changed the polity, it has changed our economy, it has changed society, it has changed, even our culture has been changed, and of course our healthcare has also changed. It has impacted under society, it has also impacted education. So for example, you will say ki under polity, the federal ties of India were under strain, because for some time center said that the responsibility to counter COVID-19 was primarily on the states, but the states did not have the resources. So finally center itself had to intervene. So it is also a strain on our political structure. Economy to of course a devastated economy है ना. बहुत सारा contact sensitive sector जो गुड़ा थिला से गुड़ा सब बहुत सारा shrink करिगला. For example hospitality sector, travel, aviation, all of these sectors. So किछि sector bounce back करिगले, किछि sector permanently repress ହେଇକି रहिगले जोटा को हम K-shaped recovery कहउछु. Government claims that economy amaro V-shaped recovery hela, but most economists now say कि now it is a K-shaped recovery. So this is how it impacted economy. I'm just giving you a few points under each heading. Similarly, under society, healthcare sector को हमें majorly focus करिया को बाध्य हलु. वैक्सीन डेवलपमेंट है एजुकेशन कौन ऑनलाइन एजुकेशन हो गला डिस्टेंस लर्निंग ये सब जिनस आसला ई एजुकेशन ये सब जिनस आसला culture how it impacted our culture social distancing and everything now we are more aware of distance now the point is you are looking at the question from how many ways you can look at the question from so this is what we know as dimensions now, there is a very well known formula or I would say well known framework there are many frameworks of multidimensional answer writing so one very common formula framework I'm sure many of you would know is spatial. What does this stand for? Social, political, economical, IR or external affairs. Okay. Then ecological or environmental. Then legal. So basically, if you don't know much about one question and you don't have a lot of time to structure your answer, you can easily use this framework. And you can many people what they do is ki they write these things as subheadings or headings, then think about what we have to write. Okay. So for example, तुमको बहुत बेसी भाबिया पड़िबनी जदि ये फ्रेमवर्क टा माइंड रे रखियो को भी क्वेश्चन आसियो यू जस्ट राइट just divide it into these points social factors political factors ए वाला लिखि दबो space दे दे and finally write a few lines under that then it will be easier for you to think of points है ना so it is also a very good tool to generate new points okay now this is just spatial is just one of the frameworks that you have there are many other frameworks that people use to structure their answer and this can also depend on what kind of GS paper it is or what kind of paper it is and accordingly also you can structure your answer let's say there is a question on economy so now you can structure your answer according to primary sector secondary sector and tertiary sector your entire answer will be divided into this way okay. Similarly let's say even under economy if you want to become even more specific ଯଦି ତମ ପାଖରେ ଭଲ knowledge ଅଛି now you think of economic survey को भी इकोनॉमिक सर्वे को उठेइबो एंड देखियो कि सेटा को तार डिफरेंट चैप्टर्स को केमितिया डिवाइड करा जाई फॉर एग्जांपल गोटे चैप्टर थिबो सबले सेठी स्टार्टिंग रे नॉर्मल हमर प्राइमरी सेकेंडरी टर्शियरी थिबो तापर गोटे चैप्टर थिबो ट्रेड ऊपर गोटे चैप्टर ट्रेड एंड कॉमर्स गोटे चैप्टर थिबो गोटे चैप्टर थिबो फाइनेंसिंग गवर्नमेंट फाइनेंस और टैक्सेशन ऊपर हला गोटे चैप्टर थिबो लेट्स से सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट ऊपर so now you can also structure your answer according to these say headings or subheadings this is one trick that you can use many people if you think about similarly let's say for other GS answers now you think of many monthly current affairs magazines तो पढ़िथियो बहुत सारा डेली बेस्ड इंस्टीट्यूट कोचिंग इंस्टीट्यूट माने बाहर करंती now you think how they divide their current affairs magazines so you will usually see in this order usually they will have polity or even IR in the beginning international relation polity economy society science and technology environment culture ethics now you can use these as your factors also a way रे भी तुम्हें structure कर परियो the point is there is n number of ways in which you can structure but please develop this habit of 3-4 major ways of dividing your answer so that you don't have to think too much in the exam hall कि what to write okay जहाँ भी देखियो क्वेश्चन देखियो जदि इकोनॉमी ऊपर अछि माइंड रे फर्स्ट आसिया कथा कि एटा को इकोनॉमी पेपर रे मु को वे रे डिवाइड करि पारि जदि गोटे जेनेरिक जीएस सोसाइटी ऊपर सपोज गोटे टॉपिक अछि ताको हम स्पेशल वे रे डिवाइड करि पारियो ओके so these are the frameworks which help you to structure your answer so let's take up the last technical part for this class that is directives this will wrap up our class so what do you mean by directives can someone tell me first other directives ta kaha under asibo is it a content is it presentation is it structuring what will this come under
So structuring ଉପରେ ଆସିବ sir.
Very good.
Structuring plus some.
No, mostly structuring. Okay. Structuring under ही आउ accordingly तुम्हारा content भी सही बड़ा है जो. So what do you mean by directives?
Sir, how do we approach a question? Like if they want us to elucidate or ମାନେ ସେମାନେ pro cons ବତେଇବାକୁ ଆମକୁ ଚାହୁଁଛନ୍ତି. They want us to
Very good.
analyze it completely.
Very good. So basically directives are the keywords which direct us of how to or what to write in your answer. Okay. And these are, for example, directives are देखियो किसी keyword जोड़ा सबले towards the end of the question थिबो. For example, discuss about something. Okay. Or they will say कि justify this. They will say कि analyze this. Or यार critically examine. So these are the directives. Now we'll briefly go through the directives so that you don't get confused in exam hall. Now there are some coaching institutes who also publish a PDF or list of directives and what they mean. If you can go through them, then it is fine. So individually बहुत सारा directive रो मान्य कौन है से तेरे exactly कौन लिखा है discuss करते हैं. That is also very good. But before going into that, do remember it's very I mean it is required that you should understand what is the directive and accordingly tailor your answer. But just in case you have very less content, okay, then तब तो directive को मारो गोली. You have to write anyhow. You have to write something. But for other cases, and we are assuming that you will usually go prepared to the exam hall, so you have that content, then directives becomes very, very important. Why? Because it decides how your answer is written. And believe me, according to directive, your answer can change radically also, given with the same kind of question. Okay. Now let's discuss what this means. Let's say there is one question, and this was one of the question asked in UPSC. Enumerate, I think it was asked, enumerate the types of taxes or something it was asked. The types of taxes levied by center and states. Okay, something like this. And there is another question. Discuss taxation structure of India. Okay. Now, even though we have similar keywords here, which is tax, but because of these directives, your answer would become radically different. So in this question, in question 1, they are asking you enumerate. Means they are simply asking you to list out what are the different types of taxes. So here you are supposed to write, okay, there are some direct taxes, there are some indirect taxes, and direct tax under AE so indirect tax under AE majorly GST, direct tax under income tax, corporate tax. So you have to list out. Okay. But here they are asking the taxation structure of India कौन. So here you have to write, let's say about tax slab विषय लिखियो. Okay, ये सब जिनसे लिखियो, hierarchy विषय लिखियो. So depending on the keyword, if you don't pay attention to the keyword, you can even get 0 marks. For example, here if you have written about taxation in general and you have not written about different types of taxes, you can also get 0 out of 10. Okay. So how do we approach directives? In my mind, I usually divide this into 3 levels of difficulty or complexity. Okay. Now the first level is very, very easy one. Level 1 is very, very easy. That is easy to answer. कौन directive easy to answer? What as we discuss, describe, enumerate or list out. These are the level 1. Very easy to answer. Now discuss माने कौन? किसी भी generic जिनसे किसी भी discuss करी है तो कौन है? किसी माने you have to just write some generic things and your job is done. It's very easy. Don't have to think much about it. Describe again, description दियो. Okay. Describe the social conditions of India during the age of Buddha. Describe करो था. Enumerate माने list. You will give a list of things. Now the next level of difficulty, let's say this is a moderate level, level 2. What are the level 2 directives? Illustrate. Illustrate माने होची? Illustrate माने कौन? With examples. So whatever answer you are writing, you have to give examples. Explain. Evaluate. For example, evaluate रे कौन? Both basically pros and cons you can write. Pros and cons or advantages and disadvantages you can write. justify why you are claiming something or why you are answering something in a certain way. So these are the level 2 things, level 2 directives, moderate level of difficulty. Now there are some level 3 or these are the difficult ones. Which are the difficult? That is difficult to answer. Level 3 directives कौन होगा? Examine, critically examine, सेमती analyze करो, critically analyze. These are the level 3. Why these are level 3? Because now you have to examine means go into depth and also sometimes give your own verdict or way forward. You have to give maybe some suggestions also you have to give, but you also you have to mainly you have to examine means you have to go into depth. Okay. Critically examine means you certainly have to give your own opinion also. Now here your opinion is mandatory. Depth रे examine करियो plus निजर opinion किछि दबो. Okay. So that is why analyze, critically analyze. देखो या भी ये सब जिनसे बहुत बेसिक difference नहीं. But the point is here you have to go into depth. You cannot write a very superficial kind of answer. So these are a bit more difficult to answer in the sense that if you let's say there is a question on critically examine. Suppose the question is देखो केमिति एबे तुमको लागियो कि directives ऊपर केते depend करे answer रे केते मार्क मिलियो. Now let's take an example कि removal of article 370 or let's say withdrawal of the 3 farm laws. This is such kind of questions are being asked. Or let's say there is a question on organic farming. Suppose on these topics there is one kind of question which is saying to describe or discuss, and there is another kind of question which is saying critically examine. Now here your answer would be different. Why? Because describing means you just have to write something, but critically examine like have to go into depth and you have to say that okay, article 370 ro yeah pros and cons thila, so for that reason government has taken this initiative, but it is also being criticized on these grounds. But finally it is also many people feel, or according to these experts, it is being said that it was taken as the step taken has been in the right way, or it has ushered in peace, or it has justified a historical wrong. So here you have to go into depth and you have to also give your own opinion. Own opinion कौन सबले personally तमो opinion नो expert मानकर opinion और सही field रे जो माने जहाँ किसी कहउछन. Here your very personal thinking does not matter because this is not an essay or ethics kind of an answer. Similarly on 3 farm laws काहे की आस्तिला, काहे की protest हला and काहे की finally withdraw होई गला. तो ता भीतर तुम depth रे जाई की कहउ पड़ियो and finally you will give a verdict. Let's say you are saying now ki okay, the 3 farm laws were initiated for the betterment of farm sector and to ensure that the government is not overburdened, fiscally overburdened बेसी न हो, plus जोटा let's say जोटा water table जो area रे लो अच्छी से जगह रे water intensive crops न हो, बहुत सारे reasons थिला. But due to lack of political consensus and social fabric to be somehow it was under strain, so for these reasons government had to withdraw these unpopular laws. So here you are going a bit into depth. You are not just describing what are just the 3 farm laws, and you are not just giving a facts ki ebe asla 2019 रे asla 20 रे asla 22 रे गला. So now critically examine or critical analysis कहदेले you have to go into depth. Okay. Similarly organic farming, if it is asked ki critically analysis करो, so that means you have to say ki organic farming whether it is justified or not. If we mindlessly implement organic farming, what dangers can it impose? Let's say maybe we'll not have food security also because our food production may reduce drastically. So now my point is depending on what directive is asked, your answer might change. Okay. Any doubts so far?
सर आपण मेंशन करथिले सर कि माने हमें पर्सनल ओपिनियन देबो बट सेटा इट शुड बी एन एक्सपर्ट ओपिनियन.
तो सर जो एक्सपर्ट ओपिनियन टा भी हमें दबु सेटा शुड इट बी लाइक न्यूट्रल इन स्टैंस और वी हैव टू लाइक टेक अ साइड जेतले हमें लेवल 3 आंसर्स को आंसर करछु.
Okay. That depends on a few factors. Let me discuss that 1 second. Okay. First thing is ki first of all it will depend on the topic or the subject itself. In general, jodi GS ro topic re gote question pachara aichi, it is expected that you are not going to give your personal opinion, even if the question is personal. So even if the question is saying, oh, what is your opinion? Let's say they are asking ki, what is your opinion about the organic farming? It's not like you know, mo jab organic farming karanti setme mate bahut bhal hai to sabti organic farming kar diya jo. That is not your personal. They are not asking for your personal opinion. So here you have to mention some ki according to let's say MS Swaminathan ki immediately imposing organic farming is not justified, or according to the crisis we can see in Sri Lanka, we cannot impose overnight. Okay, so you have to give some justification, and you will always say ki my opinion is in line of this thing. तुम्हें नीचे से तेरे तीर चलेगा दरकार नहीं. There are a few cases and few subjects, let's say for example essay or ethics, there would be some gray areas in which you can give your own opinion. Okay. For example, suppose they are asking, let's say in Sabrimala case, whether that should have been allowed, whether women should be allowed entry into some temples in which it is culturally or religiously barred them to be. Now it is a sort of a gray area. You can take either side. You can say ki, and there also you have to first give both sides of the argument. You will say ki, okay, this is culturally or religiously, this is the argument, but also constitutional values accordingly, or you know, according to progressive values, we should do this. We should allow women. And finally, we'll give your own opinion. Okay, in my opinion, okay, this should have been done. Now that is immaterial. But if the case is either very decided or very technical, then you should not give your own opinion. अब suppose पता रहा तुमको dowry case है, should we take dowry or not? You'll say personally I think we should take because it greases the wheel of the economy. You cannot write like that. You have to understand in what context, what opinion can you give. If it is a question of your optional, okay, sometimes they will write your opinion, but actually the answer is already decided. Suppose question पता रहे कि do you think that the use of recreational drugs increases intelligence or increases creativity? कि recreational drugs नला creativity बढ़े कि नहीं? ये तो personal opinion की पचरना है. तो कहन कि आगे मुझे तो गांजा पीला मुझे बहुत बढ़िया poem लिखुची से बढ़िया लिखियोन. There you have to also justify it with some kind of research. That means if they are asking that question, the issue might be already decided. So they are not also asking your personal opinion. If they ask whether sociology is a science or a humanities subject, it is not a personal opinion. Even if they are saying, in your opinion, what do you think? There you have to give the established answer. So it depends on the context. Gradually, as you write more and more answer, you will understand what exactly to write. Okay.
Sir,
Any other question?
Sir, I have few things to clarify, sir. So starting from the very basics, sir, when we are starting answer writing, sir, like introductory lines, we have to put subheadings like introduction or conclusion,
No.
forward or something like that.
जमा नहीं, बहुत रूकी मिस्टेक पिलाने करंदी स्टार्टिंग लिखन दे माने इंट्रोडक्शन लिखियो, इंट्रोडक्शन अंडरलाइन तापर लिखियो बॉडी कंक्लूजन. प्लीज डोंट डू दैट. That is a very rookie mistake. The point is whatever you write, the first paragraph will always be your introduction, last paragraph will always be your conclusion, and in between whatever you write, it will be your body. Okay.
Sir, concluding
So
lines also, sir, we are not supposed to write way forward.
no, again, see, when you write, I will explain these things. In some cases, you have to write way forward. Have to in the sense that it is better if you write it. In some cases, it's also okay if you don't write it. The mane kon, let's say ki got a question achi ki which is asking you about some kind of issues. Okay, then it is better if you make your conclusion as your way forward. Let's say they are asking ki what are the issues with Indian agriculture. तो तुम्हारा बॉडी इंट्रोडक्शन आरंभ करी बॉडी पर्यंत सब इश्यू ऊपर फोकस करियो ना. तो इश्यू रे ही तुम्हारा आंसर सॉरी जो आंसर बहुत नेगेटिव काइंड ऑफ हिजो, इवन इफ दे हैव नॉट एक्सप्लिसिटली आस्क्ड यू अबाउट द सॉल्यूशन. तो इन दैट केस वे फॉरवर्ड जगह रे तुम्हें कंक्लूजन रे गोटे वे फॉरवर्ड भलिया गोटे सॉल्यूशन दे दो कि अकॉर्डिंग टू दिस कमिटी और आई थिंक दिस कैन बी एन आंसर. ओके, so this can be a solution to the issues of Indian agriculture. Okay, But suppose the question itself is asking for a solution also. What are the issues of Indian agriculture and how can they be uh, ameliorated or how can they be improved? Now you have to devote more into solution part also. There you have to specifically mention way forward, and under that you can write some suggestions. Okay, some initiative already taken by government, and after that way forward. And you can also after that also you can still write one more conclusion. So it all depends on what is the context, on in which context the question is being asked. So as you write your question and you write the test series, you'll or daily answer writing jete kariyo dhire dhire isu jinso jana padiyo.
Thank you, sir.
So,
Thank you.
sir, I have a question. Sir, how do we approach, like, what is the difference between in approaching a 20 marker question and a 15 marker question?
20 marker, 15 marker, first of all, because it will vary in terms of word limit. You have to practice a lot and you have to understand how to write that within the fixed time for that and within the word limit. So accordingly, everything else, some other things might change. For example, in 20 marker, you can expand a bit more. You can write more lines. You can draw some diagrams. In 15 markers, if you have enough content, you can reduce it to diagrammatized points. I will explain this thing in the next classes also. Diagrammatized points रे तुम लिखी पारियो short. And ସେଥିରେ बहुत सारा keyword को underline करी माने rapidly you can move on to the longer question. The point is all about management of time, space, and word limit. That's the only difference. Content wise बहुत बेसी differ करियो नहीं. So
Sir,
yes, Pratyush.
sir, how to start so there was a question regarding that biodiversity, impact of climate change on biodiversity. So, sir, it is better to start with a data given approach or like some reports, or how to start better? Which will fetch more weightage on that? It is a data or whether it is a definition or regarding some reports?
Very good. I was hoping that someone will ask a similar kind of question. It's a very good question. Let's try to understand. As soon as you see some question like this, the first instinct of most people would be to define these things and then move on. But again, there is no hard and fast rule on this. Exactly it is best jinsa. But try to sensibly think about this. Both climate change and global warming, biodiversity, these are very well-known concepts. If you try to start with defining this, the examiner already knows, and many people will write similar kind of answers. So in my opinion, it does not make any sense to spend a lot of word limit को मैंने खाई की इस तरह time भी waste करके बहुत सारा define करो कि this is global warming or this is climate change or this is biodiversity. It's better to in this case start with a fact or context. As per the latest IPBES report, due to climate change, global biodiversity has reduced by 30% from the levels of 1970, something like this. Now this exactly hits the core or the demand of the question. ଯଦି ତମେ ଜଣେ start କରିକି this is biodiversity, already ଆମେ ଜାଣିଛୁ biodiversity କ'ଣ. But now think of another question. Think of a question about let's say how can India ensure its strategic autonomy? Now strategic autonomy is not that well known a concept as biodiversity or climate change. So here it is better that if you start to define or if you write something about what do we mean by strategic autonomy. Or let's say the question is on let's say quantum computing. So here if you start by explaining what quantum computing is, it is better because not everyone knows what quantum computing is. Again, it all depends on the context or what exactly the question is, and this is an insight that you will develop
Demand
as
of the
you
question.
write more. Yes, definitely.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other question?
Yes, sir. That sir, ଆମେ ଯୋଉ କୁହାଯାଏ କି flow chart ବନେଇବ, ତ sir to be honest ମୁଁ ଏତେ ବର୍ଷ ପଢି ସାରିଲା ପରେ ବି flow chart କେମିତି develop କରାଯିବ ସେଟା ମତେ ଜଣା ନାହିଁ। ଆଉ ସ୍ପେଶାଲି ଏକ୍ସାମ ମୋମେଣ୍ଟରେ ମାନେ ସେଇ ଟୁ ଦି ପଏଣ୍ଟ ସେଇ ଭେରି ମୋମେଣ୍ଟରେ କେମିତି ଫ୍ଲୋ ଚାର୍ଟଟେ ସେଠି ରିପ୍ରେଜେଣ୍ଟ କରିବି, ସେଇଟା ୱିଥ୍ ଟାଇମ୍ ଡେଭଲପ ହୁଏ ୟା ଆମେ ଯୋଉଟା ଏବେ ମାନେ ଯୋଉଟା ପ୍ରାକ୍ଟିସ କରିବୁ ସେଇଟା ହିଁ ଏକ୍ସାମରେ କରିବୁ, ନା ଅନ୍ ଦି ସ୍ପଟ୍ କରି ହୁଏବାର କିଛି ଚାନ୍ସ ଥାଏ?
On the spot ବି କରିପାରିବ. If you practice a lot, then you can do it on the spot also. Do remind me this question in our next session, then I'll show you with an example. It will be better for you. For example, बहुत सारे जिनसे इतना हूँ कहीं भी on the spot how you can come up things on the spot. କିଛି କିଛି ଜିନିଷ ନା ପ୍ରାକ୍ଟିସ କରି କରି ମାଇଣ୍ଡରେ ଗୋଟେ ଗୋଟେ ସ୍ପେସିଫିକ ମଡ୍ୟୁଲ ବନିଯିବ and ଯେତେବେଳେ କିଛି ଗୋଟେ ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ କ୍ୱେଶ୍ଚନ ଆସିବ what you can do is କି slightly change that module and use that thing. For example ମୋର ଯେତିକି ମନେ ପଡୁଛି ମୁଁ ଗଭର୍ନାନ୍ସ ର ଗୋଟେ ଡାଇଗ୍ରାମ ଥିଲା, ଗୋଟେ 3ଟା ପିଲର ବାଲା ଡାଇଗ୍ରାମ ଥିଲା ଗୁଡ ଗଭର୍ନାନ୍ସ ର। ସେଥିରେ ଥିଲା କ୍ୱାଲିଟି ଅଫ ସର୍ଭିସ ଡେଲିଭରି, ଗ୍ରିଭାନ୍ସ ରିଟ୍ରେସଲ and one more thing I'm forgetting. Okay, so and ତା ତଳେ ଥିଲା କି ସିଟିଜେନ ସେଣ୍ଟ୍ରିକ ଗଭର୍ନାନ୍ସ। ତା ମାନେ ହଉଛି କି ଗୁଡ ଗଭର୍ନାନ୍ସ ର ପିଲର୍ସ ହେଲା ଏଇ 3ଟା। ମୁଁ ସେଇ ଡାଇଗ୍ରାମ ଟା 2-3 ଥର କରିକି ସେଟା ଯେତେବେଳେ ମୋର ଧୀରେ ଧୀରେ ପ୍ରାକ୍ଟିସ ହେଇଗଲା, when the question was something else entirely. Let's say the question is about even let's say in ethics there is a question on probity in governance, or the question is on maintaining transparency. Now you can draw the similar diagram and you can think of other 3 pillars or 2 pillars or 4 pillars which you can say ki these are the pillars of probity of governance. You can write ki one pillar likhi do honesty, gotre likhi do integrity, gotre likhi do time punctuality, kichhi bhi likhi do. Katha hochi ki no one can say ki this is something that you have written wrong, because these are relatively subjective things. Now you can come up with these things on the spot also, but only if you have practiced enough before. So the core answer to your question is you have to always practice and develop that instinct to reduce the content in a diagrammatized form. ସେଇଟା ହେଲେ ହିଁ ତୁମେ ଲେଖିପାରିବ, and doesn't matter flow chart, pie diagram, कुछ भी ହେଇଯାଉ, ମାନେ similar kind of diagram ଯେତେବେଳେ ତୁମେ ବହୁତ ଥର practice କରିଦେଇଥିବ ନା, and mind ରେ ଅଛି ତୁମର content, this is my content and I have to convert it into the diagram, then you can convert it, no issues. The problem is that you have not, what from your question I can understand is that either you are intimidated by the prospect of drawing flowcharts. By the way, I don't know why it should be restricted to flowchart only. It can be any other kind of diagram also. But the point is, if you have practiced enough, then you can convert any kind of idea into a kind of diagrammatized form. Okay, any other question? I think we should wrap up our session today, because it's not like this is going to be our only class. I'll take up maybe 1 or 2 more classes. This is the very basic class on answer writing. Maybe one out gote class re heijibo. Next class re kon kariya na kete oda answer copies tumku dekheibi, and setru kichi good practices we can pick up, and we'll discuss ki what could have been done better or what was missing here. We'll learn a lot of neat tricks from that also. But for that reason, today's class was very beginner level class. I hope you enjoyed it a lot, and thank you for your enthusiasm. We will meet next in our next class. Okay.
This is part 1 of our art of answer writing class. आपण हमर क्रैश कोर्स जॉइन करि परिबे OPSC OCS मेंस पई, जोठी कि हमें पूरा सिलेबस आपणकर कवर करिवु OCS मेंस पई। मेंस आगरु आउ आपन को बहुत भलो नोट्स PDF आउ शॉर्ट नोट्स भी प्रोवाइड करिवु, जोटा कि आपन को एग्जाम आगरु रिवाइज करिया को हेल्प हबो। हम क्लास स्टार्ट हेई सालानी 26 थ्रू, जो माने एबे जॉइन करिया को चाहते जॉइन करि परिबे। आपन को रिकॉर्डिंग वीडियोस आउ रिकॉर्डिंग recorded PDFs मिल जिवो। सो क्रैश कोर्स डिटेल्स आपन को हम टेलीग्राम ग्रुप रे मिल जिवो, और टेलीग्राम ग्रुप रो डिटेल्स आउ हम कांटेक्ट डिटेल्स मु तळे मेसेज रे देई की पिन कर देबी। सो आपन सेठू हमको कांटेक्ट करि परिबे कि हम टेलीग्राम ग्रुप रे जाई की क्रैश कोर्स रो डिटेल्स टा चेक करि परिबे। थैंक यू। जय जगन्नाथ।